Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of DoubleDM podcast, episode 104, I think. Yeah, I'm your host, Emil. Today, we are talking about monster tactics and that most creatures you as GMs play probably could do more if you think about how to use them more instead of just throwing them at your players. Before we dive into how you can draw most out of your monsters without actually using the stat block that much, or without making them stronger by buffing numbers, we will recap our weeks. Niels, how was your week?
I had a great week, actually. I had lovely TTRPG sessions, lovely meetings with friends, just in general a good time. But with my exam coming up, I am a bit overwhelmed and stressed right now. But overall, still going good, I think. At least for now.
You will pass easily. Peasy.
Yeah,
just go to sleep now. Don't wake up until it's don't wake up until it's actually there, and then just go in there and tell the person that is, whoever is taking your exam, I know everything, and then they will know that you know everything and just give you a passing grade. Trust me, It works every time.
Okay, perfect. I'll try that.
Don't do that, actually.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to get it right.
In case anyone tries that, it doesn't work.
Yeah. But we had a lovely TTRPG session regarding a one-shot, or that we had moved 1 week because the GM got sick. We had a Valentine's Day one-shot where we had to collect the heart pieces of a giant or titan that has his heart pieces had his heart pieces stolen, and his heart was shattered, and we had to retrieve it to get him to love again. Yeah, it was really fun. And just in general, a good time. What else can I say? It was pretty straightforward. Go there, get heart piece number 1, number 2, and number 3. Bring it back, and there we go. But it was still...
I mean, if relationships and love would be that easy.
Yeah. Yes.
So you had TTRPGs the last week. That's great. Yeah. I didn't.
My condolences. How was your week?
Shit. TTRPGs. No, I really had nothing the last week. I had an exam on Monday. So the week before that, I had no TTRPGs whatsoever because those that I wanted to have fell through. And everything else was like, let's not play any TTRPGs until my exam is done, because I just can't focus on preparing an exam, preparing a session, and also being hosting it more or less. Yeah. So I was like, okay, no, let's just, for that week, those that are already planned will happen. Those that happen every Thursday happen, but okay, don't need it. That fell through. We're gonna start a new campaign with my first ever TTRPG group today. On Thursday the 23rd.
Okay.
We are starting a new campaign. Same characters, though. So some people call the characters the group are the binding point of a campaign, as long as these characters play their campaign.
Okay, cool.
And we will see where that leads. We've saved the world twice, more or less. Once, definitely. And the second time, we stopped someone that wanted to control all magic, more or less. So 2 times already, maybe even more than that. And yeah, there's still dangers out there.
Alrighty.
And we have to go find them, or, well, they will have to find us. But yeah.
Yeah, but about that exam, how did it go? I didn't talk to you since then.
Okay,
or
so
not that much.
So I want everyone to imagine that they are taking an exam. I know that's a stressful situation, so you don't have to imagine it for a lot. But imagine you're sitting there and think about academic integrity and how important it is. And now imagine violating it. Not just you as a person, but basically everyone. Because this was a course with like 300 students in it at the beginning. Obviously, some of those dropped out, some of those changed, some of them didn't write the exam. But we were like 130, 140 people. And they, before the exam even started, said, we're going to write the exam in this room. That room has a capacity of 40 people at maximum.
Oh, damn. Okay.
And I knew this wouldn't work because, right, I knew how many people are in this course, more or less. And I knew the capacity of this room. So I was like, what is their backup plan? Their backup plan was, we will just see if we find another room. So they found another room for us, set us in there, crammed together. So not really like... Looking at your neighbor's paper and just writing off of that was very easy. I didn't do it. some people just have to believe me that I didn't do it. But also the exam wasn't that hard. So, but then also, for example, the exam was scheduled to start at 10:15, right? 10:15 was the supposed click your pens and start writing. In 90 minutes, we will collect. We got the exam at 10:21.
Okay.
So first of all, now this seems like a minor thing, right? They just extend the time of the exam by 6 minutes for everyone, no problem. But still, theoretically, by academic code, more or less, the exam can be more or less marked as invalid if someone wants it to be marked invalid by that. Because we didn't write in the exact time we were given. But okay, right? Like, they didn't plan this exam apparently, which was very surprising to me.
Yeah.
And then I flipped over the exam to the first page. I looked at the first question and was like, yeah, there's no way I'm gonna pass this.
Oh boy.
I skipped past this question, looked at the second question, and was like, oh, this exam is fucking easy. The first exercise in this exam was the hardest one of it.
Okay.
Like, the rest was so freaking easy.
That's good. That's amazing.
I don't know if I passed yet, but it's a very rough estimate that I have 60% of the available points. By me, this is if everything goes to shit and everything I somewhat guessed is wrong. I still know that I have 60%, 100% by what we were taught.
Yeah, then easy peasy.
Yeah, right.
Easy peasy.
This exam was a roller coaster ride of emotions. And after that, I said, okay, cool. I will reward myself, right? I have finished exam. Super Bowl is over, so I don't have much work to do. On Tuesday, I still had to work a little bit in the printer, in the printing house. And after that, I ordered a pizza. I got home. I ate my pizza. And then I realized that there was something wrong. I sat here at my PC. I was editing actually this episode that you're listening to right now.
Okay.
And was like, wait, is my right earphone, my right headset speaker broken? No, my right ear was broken.
Oh no, oh god.
My right ear had through some kind of reason, I had a hearing loss in my right ear. I had to get that fixed yesterday on Wednesday. Now I can hear perfectly fine again.
Very good.
And the doctor and my mother, who is more or less a trained physician, not actually a general practitioner. So my mother isn't actually a doctor, but she is an orthopedic physician or something. I don't know what you call it in English, but she checked it out and said, yeah, maybe it's just more or less stress. Right? A clogged ear with some stress is just take a rest for a day. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And it now works perfectly fine again. So hopefully it stays that way. But I can tell you, as a podcaster, the worst thing you can actually have is some kind of hearing loss, apparently. Because I wasn't able to concentrate on editing the episode, right? Because something just fell off. I've trained my ears as an editor for like a year or two now to pick out certain sounds, to know if something sounds off, and that completely messed with everything for me.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, in general, just when you have you yourself trained in a skill and then lose part of an ability to act on that skill, that can throw you off big time.
Yeah, it was strange. So, slight medical journey aside, no TTRPGs except today for me. So yeah, my week was kind of tumultuous, to say the least. Yours was great though, so that's great.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have anything else to recap.
Me neither.
So with that, why don't we jump ahead into our episode on enemy tactics and how you as a game master can make your combats more interesting by using tactics and strategies to make your players sweat. We will see you after the break. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey. Nils, I recently had another session of my Tyranny of Dragons game. And my players have finally switched over to Rise of Tiamat. And in that book, there is a chapter called Varam the White, where my players basically have to go after Varam the White, one of the dragon speakers, one of the dragon voices, or whatever it's called in the game, and capture him, kill him, get the dragon mask, whatever. And they have to go through the Serpent Hills on the Sword Coast, and there's a few random encounters that happen around there. Obviously, you can roll on the table to get to see which encounter you get, but I obviously am not that big of a fan of that. I know why people are fan of random encounters. Personally, not that much of a fan, but that's basically due to my playstyle and how my players and I like to play. There's one on there that states that there are lizard folk hunting party hunting food for their snake matriarch, snake patriarch masters. And I was like, okay, how can I make this interesting? Because my players are 4 very high equipped, strong adventurers, and lizard folks are not strong enemies from the stat block. And I thought there are a few different ways I can make this combat more interesting. And we talked about a bit in recent episodes, in other episodes, how to make combats more interesting. But that's always kind of was assuming that the enemies actually can hold a fight against the party and would not be completely obliterated by them. Because these lizard folk, they have, I don't know, I think 22 HP and an AC of 15.
Yeah, okay.
Like the draconic sorcerer that the group has can put a fireball, and if she hits all 9 of them, they're all dead.
Yeah.
So how do I make this interesting? This was a long encounter. It was a very long, drawn-out sequence. It wasn't just, okay, the fight starts, let's go. It happened way earlier than that. I will go into that in a bit, but generally my thought process was, okay, I could either increase the numbers and make the lizard folk themselves a little bit more beefy, a little bit more heavy, a little bit more stronger. But I was like, while that is fun, it then also probably means that my players will approach this combat like every other with a strong enemy. I wanted something different. I decided these lizard folks are expert hunters. They know the area. So they would probably have an advantage just from that. And they know when their prey is a little bit stronger than them that they should use their environment and their knowledge of that environment to their advantage. And that's then how I decided I'm gonna go into the tactical route this time.
Yeah.
These lizard folk will fight smart. They will not fight with strength. They will fight smart. In the end, my players still won the fight. But it was, at certain points for them, kind of scary because I challenged them to a combat that they weren't used to.
Just using the tactical approach, you could say, is just a different way to challenge your players, rather than just putting a pool of hit points and some damage against them, but rather what solution can your players think of in the heat of battle to overcome this challenge without any major sacrifices. And I think that this is a really interesting approach because every single stat block that you can use for any games can be made stronger just by using the stat block smart in a interesting way. Because I don't think that you just added weird things that didn't make any sense for a hunting party just to make it more interesting, but using the abilities that the hunting party has and what it implies that there is a hunting party regularly. Using that to their advantage, just using the terrain to lure them or your party in a more advantageous position for the hunting party is a perfect way to just beef up an encounter without actually beefing up the enemies itself.
I'm also gonna say this, right? Making the monster or the enemies itself more interesting is a very good way, but it's not the only way, right? And that's where the monster tactics come in. That's where knowledge and implications come in from the stat block, for example. When you look at evolution, when you look at history in real world of animals, of dinosaurs, of everything, basically. Everything has something that makes them what they are, as dumb as it sounds, right? The shark has more senses. They can sense movement in the water for a very high distance away. They can smell blood for a very high distance through water. Just the general evolution of predators versus prey, how they evolved. Predators have their eyes straight up front to look at something, to look at their prey, to see their prey, to find their prey, and then chase it. While the ones that are more prey have their ears rather to the side, so they can see more behind them and to the sides and in front, so they have a better view of their surroundings, so they can escape a predator. That alone already implies something for tactics or for specific strategies, both will apply for their survival, for their protecting their younglings, everything. There is implications behind that, and each of them will use their specific given traits to their advantage.
I mean, look at a pack of wolves, for example. They are obviously hunting animals. They have their eyes in the front, so they can rather close to each other, but facing the same direction, so they can measure distance, and they hunt in a pack. They have a way of doing things. One wolf alone wouldn't be able to do the things a whole pack can do. Just not just because the pack just has more wolves in it, but because they work together and they hunt together. And the same thing can be applied to any basic stat block that you can find in D&D, in Pathfinder, in whatever other system you want. Just think about what the evolutionary role, you could say, of that species might be, to figure out the implications this has on the way they do things.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make up tactics for your monster, you can basically make them up for every monster. I believe that every monster can have some sort of tactics on a specific level. Sure, I wouldn't call it tactics for all of them, but there is something to make this monster appear more like it actually would. For example, if a monster on your stat block has a flying speed, they will use it. Everything that can fly will use its flight to the best of its ability to either be safe, to flee, or to attack. But they will use it. Because it is an advantage they have over all the creatures that do not have fly as an ability. Same goes for things that can burrow or swim. They will use that ability to their advantage. If something has a very high stealth value, or even an ability that helps its stealth in specific natural environments, use that because it's on the stat block for a reason, and that's because this monster is supposed to be using it. Like, the most basic thing I can say about making a combat more interesting without actually just beefing up the stat block is using all of the stat block. Obviously not all the time. You can't do this all the time just because of circumstances. But if you have a monster that has like 3 different unique abilities to it and you don't use them, they have been pointless on the stat block for you. They didn't matter and you didn't need them. And that's bad. Because if you would have used them, the combat would have changed. It might have been more interesting and would have been better. Obviously, if the monster's in a disadvantageous position and can't use the ability, it's obviously good you didn't use it. Because maybe your players brought the monster into a location where it's disadvantageous in fighting. And that would then be obviously your players employing tactics. And that should be rewarded by not using that ability. But if the monster has the ability to use that ability, it should also use it. Because that will make for a more interesting encounter.
Yeah, and just using tactics, you could say, and using the stat blocks to the best of their abilities doesn't necessarily make the combat harder per se, but like you said, more interesting.
It makes the combat what it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
But if a monster has a challenge rating of 5, but has the base stats of health, AC, attack, and damage of a CR3 monster, the CR2 difference that is between those two comes from those abilities that you're not using.
Exactly.
Obviously, we know CR is a completely bullshit measurement of everything, so please don't care about that too much. But still, if your monster feels weak, it might just be because you're not playing to the monster's actual ability, like it's supposed to be used. If your monster has an ability that says it is better at fighting at night, this monster is nocturnal all of a sudden. You need to know that. Because why would this monster, if it knows it is weaker at daylight, even go out at daylight? Sure, you might make up answers for that, and that's then fine. But generally speaking, that monster is nocturnal for all I care.
Yeah.
If that ability says it has an advantage on stealth checks, if it walks around at night, that monster will never go out at daylight because it knows it will get less food in daylight.
Yeah, or just having the ability to see at night. Like some sort of dark vision is a huge advantage over things that cannot see in the dark. And that also means that your creature should be nocturnal. And
I mean, we can talk about the fact that most D&D parties are very much not nocturnal, even though they all have dark vision. Because, 50% of the races have dark vision, plus some classes and subclasses give you dark vision, plus some abilities give you dark vision, plus some spells give you dark vision and stuff like that. So there's more than 50% of your party is going to have dark vision up at any given moment, probably, in your D&D games. Or in your whatever games even. If a creature has dark vision, like when we're talking D&D or Pathfinder, it doesn't necessarily mean it is nocturnal in the sense of the system. But as Neil said, it is going to have an advantage over creatures that cannot see at night. And your party, even though they have dark vision, will probably sleep at night. So if a creature has dark vision, advantage on stealth checks in the night or whatever, it will attack the party while resting. And that already is an interesting fight than just, oh, you're on the road and suddenly some kind of beast jumps out of the bushes at you. Oh, you're at a long rest. All of you are asleep except one, and you hear the sound. You try to wake the others up, but this night stalker, this night hunting creature already jumps at you. It's already more interesting.
Yeah, and the same thing, a creature doesn't need necessarily a high intelligence score or whatever to think about these things, because
it doesn't need an intelligence score at all, because
exactly.
Evolution proves, I'm saying this, we all know how evolution works, at least on a base level. The strongest survive. However they become the strongest has nothing to do with intelligence.
Exactly.
Sure, we humans became the most dominant species on Earth because we were able to be intelligent. But a lion doesn't speak, has no real culture attached to it, right? Or at least none that we know of. The lion in real life doesn't have that big of an intelligence score as a human.
No.
Okay. But he doesn't have to, because evolution made him what he is, and he knows what he is.
Exactly.
He doesn't, the only thing that you really need is an intelligence score of like 3 or 4 to be able to do the things you do as the creature, because evolution made you the way you are, and you just know to be the hunter that you are, or you learn it from your parents. But intelligence has nothing to do with a creature using the nature-given abilities it has to actually be the best it can be in a fight.
Yeah, just because something isn't intelligent doesn't mean that it's stupid. They still know what they can do and will use what they can to provide the best possible outcome for them.
If you want to talk about it in gaming terms, once again, an intelligence score doesn't have to be high, but an intuition or wisdom or whatever you call it, a score that more reflects of experience, learn things, and not just the book strength you have. That is way better of an indicator of if a creature knows best how to use its given abilities. But even if it doesn't have a high wisdom or high intuition or whatever you call it, it still will be using the abilities it has because they're natural born, right? We humans have the ability to walk on 2 legs and can use our arms freely. We have opposing thumbs, which is one of the biggest advantages we have over any creature on Earth. We can grab items. We can grab objects. These 2 things are things that you kinda, but also don't really have to teach a child. It will just do the things when it can. Because it is in a pure human nature to grab things with your hands and hold on to them because we have a thumb. Or at some point, obviously, you teach your kid to walk. You pull it up and hold it gently so it can make its first steps and stuff like that. But at some point, it will just stand up and walk. This is no different than a lion teaching its cubs how to hunt prey. Just that we don't teach our kid how to hold a spear and run after, I don't know, a mammoth or something.
Not anymore, at least.
These 2 advantages that make us human, that make us as humans so advantageous, is something that they just learn in the early years of their life, in the really early years of their lives, and then just do. Right? If you apply that now to gaming, if your monster has a flight ability, it will use the flight ability just because it is natural born with a flight ability. It has learned how to use it, and therefore it will use it.
Exactly.
But I want to go back to something. Because you talked about a pack of wolves, right? That uses tactics to surround its enemies or surround its prey, and then make sure that it has no escape route anymore, or to hunt down its prey until it cannot breathe anymore or something. That's fun because that tactic only works as a group. But for a monster or for an enemy or for an opponent, for an animal to use a tactic, it doesn't have to be in a group. But just as with us humans, the ability to perform together in a group gives you a huge advantage in the world out there.
Oh, yeah.
To be at least somewhat social, right? For example, wolves. For a very long time, people thought that alpha wolves were a thing. We knew for a very long time because the person that proposed the alpha male theory took it back a few years later. The same person person said, no, this is not the case, actually. I was wrong. Just the older wolves, which are the parents of the younger ones, obviously have say because they have more experience. They are just older. They might be stronger. They just know more. They have to say, but there's no dominant male or female even that commands the whole pack. But still, they form a group. They work together. And that ability to work together, to be at least social enough to communicate in some way with each other, to work together, to perform some kind of battle plan or some kind of tactic is one of the biggest advantages you have. But not all monsters have that, because some monsters or some animals with their stat blocks or with their description in the monster manual of the book you're having in front of you, right? No matter which TTRPG you're playing, if you have a monster or an animal and you think it's a lone wolf, basically, it doesn't form groups. It's alone. It hunts alone. It lives alone. It still can use tactics.
Oh, yeah. Just one big thing from the animal world as well would be ambush predators, for example. Most ambush predators hunt alone and live alone. And especially if something has a natural stealth ability, they will use that to ambush the things they want to hunt or they want to attack.
Yeah.
They hide and wait for the specific moment, the right moment to attack. And the same thing goes for monsters that act in such a way or that are described in such a way, because nothing would blindly run into obviously dangerous situation for them.
Yeah, obviously.
They would wait for the perfect moment.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for enemies. They would wait their turn. They would wait till the moment is right to do the things that they plan to do.
Yeah. I think that is exactly where I will continue my story from the beginning of this episode, because my players were trekking through the Serpent Hills and they were tracked by a lizard folk hunting party. My players said they want to trek fast. So they had a -5 on passive perceptions. Their passive perceptions weren't high enough to spot the lizard folk stealthing around now, which was perfect. So the lizard folk observed the party a bit. They knew the party was strong, they had good equipment, and they could use magic. They knew that they weren't gonna win an outright fight against them. So what did the lizard folk hunting party do? Well, first of all, the lizard folks are smart enough to know the terrain around them and knew the players were trekking towards a very steep mountainside. So what the lizard folk did was take a shortcut, get to the top of the mountainside, and cause an avalanche of rocks. That would damage the party, kill them at best, and maybe at worst just slow them down or even take some of their resources. And it did. My players used spells, abilities, and other stuff to get away. Some of them took damage from it. My players short rested after that. That's still fine because still some abilities are gone. Some things are gone. Good. Then my players trekked through a canyon. And the lizard folk decided, well, why don't we stand on top of the canyon walls? Basically, right? We stand on top here, while the players trek through this giant canyon down there, and we shoot at them with our bows. Now, the lizard folk had disadvantage on their attack rolls on the short bows because the distance was too high, but still they would take that because the players would need some time to get up to them to even damage them. And that was exactly the case. My players were rained down with arrows until they had a chance to get up to the canyon walls and then kill and drive away all of the rest of the lizard folk that tracked them. This was the tactic the lizard folk employed. It didn't work in the end. My players won the combat, but they were slow. They hunted for a long time. They observed. They chose their natural knowledge as hunters. We want to know our prey before we kill it, because we don't know what this prey can actually do to us. So an outright fight is always a bad thing. So let's trigger an avalanche of rocks to see what happens. If we kill them, perfect. If we don't, we will use some of their resources and we will know their abilities maybe a little bit better. And then, now they are taking a very disadvantageous position against us. Let's use that. Let's use the environment to our advantage and employ a tactic where they have nothing to do because they cannot hide from us in the canyon down below. The only option that they have is try to survive our barrage of arrows and somehow get up to us. And they took the chance. They lost, but the tactic was still employed and changed the combat because the players were, oh fuck, if we stay down here, we die. What do we do now?
Yeah, this is something, using their environment to their advantage to a certain degree is amazing.
Yeah.
One thing that I really like to do in especially larger scale combats, have people or enemies pop out of seemingly nowhere that were hidden before at the specific point in time, or trying to lure my players somewhere. For example, someone luring someone in a canyon where there's a bunch of archers on top of that.
Yeah.
You just said, but a more active luring part is another great tactic to use to bring the advantageous position to the enemies themselves, rather than just waiting for the opportune moment. It all depends on how far ahead of time the enemies know that they want to fight or will fight these your players, to put the plans in motion to bring the advantageous position to the combat for themselves.
Yeah.
It can be so much fun to just see the faces of your players at the table when you just suddenly say, does a whatever to hits you? Cool. All right. Suddenly you look around and see 20 other arrows flying at you from out of the woods.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is very simple again. If this monster, this animal, this creature is in its natural habitat, it will know its natural habitat. If this creature lives, right? If you look at D&D, for these creatures, at first I thought it was a very useless thing to actually talk about, because it just was, okay, which monster can I use for my random encounter in the woods? But if you look at this, for each creature, or for many creatures, there's a tag. For example, that says this creature is often in forests or hills or Arctic regions or something like that. And thinking about what your creature, in whatever game you play, where it lives, where it hunts, where it survives, the region it lives in, it knows that region. I mean, on a smaller scale, every one of you can look outside your window right now and say, I know this street because I've been living here. And the same goes for that mystical ancient dragon living in some sort of mountain range. He knows that mountain range because he lives there. And that means he knows the environment and he knows how to use it to his advantage. And he probably adapted to that environment as well in some capacity. A polar bear has a white fur. Why? Because he lives in an Arctic ice region. And the same goes for when you look, for example, at dragons. For each of the dragon types, for example, the chromatics have a certain region they live in. The black dragon lives in a swamp because acid. But still, the black dragon has a very good chance of hiding in either swampy caves or the black muddy water of a swamp. It still fits the color. The red dragon is the only one that doesn't really. Okay, the blue dragon also with sands, but you get the point.
Yeah.
If a predator lives in a certain environment, their skin color, their scale color, their fur color will be impacted by that region, because those that have the best skin color, fur color, or scale color will survive.
Yeah, I think especially with the red and the blue dragon, or something like the tiger situation could be a thing. That, a tiger lives in a jungle and is still orange, bright orange. For a human, it's pretty easy to see, but most of the prey doesn't have the visual receptors for that color.
That could also be the case, right?
They blend in perfectly into the woods.
At least for me, it's more fun that way, to also explain it a little bit more in a scientific, natural evolution way. The color of the scales and why these creatures live in the certain area they live in. For example, the green dragon lives in forests. That fits perfectly.
Yep.
But obviously also, if you're a dragon and you have the ability to make yourself fucking invisible through spells or whatever, you don't need to have the right scale color for your environment anymore. So
exactly.
That gets thrown out of the window. But again, it's an ability that the dragon can use for its advantage. And again, they would. Now, let's get to something that is very interesting to me, because we talked a lot about the singular individual. Now I want to get to groups. Like, we talked a bit about groups so far, but especially now the group tactics aspect of it all. Because we talked about what singular things, looking at the stat block of a creature and using that to your advantage, looking at the environment the creature is in and using that to your advantage. That's what the singular creature can do. Now let's get to what a group of creatures can do, because that's often way more scary than a singular individual. If you get hunted by a pack of wolves, right? Wolves in the sense of TTRPGs and most RPGs aren't that scary once you fought them once, because then you're too high level for them. But just think about it. Getting hunted in the woods by a pack of 12 wolves. They will chase you down. They will surround you. They will make you run for your life. get you exhausted, and then catch up to you and surround you until you have no escape anymore.
Exactly. Singling out a person.
For example.
In your party, get singled out by a pack of wolves.
Yeah.
Perfect. They chase the whole party to exhaustion because they know they don't need to attack right away because they can last longer than the party if they completely only run. And then when someone of the party is exhausted, they will make a mistake, fall behind, and then they will single out this one person and surround them.
There's this one saying that says you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than your friends, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at this obviously from the perspective of the human running away from the bear. But if we look at this from the perspective of the bear, it's you just have to be faster than one of them because that will make me be able to single out that enemy, maul them to death, and have my food for the rest of the week or something.
Exactly.
Right? These creatures are smart enough to know how to survive because if not, they wouldn't be alive anymore.
Exactly.
And that's something you really always have to remember. They will be smart enough to survive. And that is the basis of everyone's tactic, survival. They will be smart enough for survival. If your party is very, very fucking strong and that shows to the outside, it's very fun to have your little kobolds or bandits or whatever then still fight the heroes that are level 15 and completely get obliterated. Yes, it's fun from the side of the party, but why would these kobolds in their right mind do that? Sure, maybe they just were too dumb to see and thought that they could take the party. Sure. Easy explanation. But yeah, these creatures, all creatures, are smart enough to survive at least. And that is the basis for every tactic.
Yeah.
And you need to remember that. These wolves, they know how much food they need to survive, and they don't hunt to preserve 2 weeks of food. Okay, maybe they do. I don't actually know how wolves hunt. I have no real knowledge, but I know that these wolves will at least hunt so they can be fed, so they can survive, because they have to. Because if they can't survive, they die, and no one wants that.
Exactly. And I think especially when it comes to group tactics, it becomes a lot of fun when the enemies are able to communicate in a way the party can understand.
Yeah.
Then it becomes really, really interesting. For example, a group of soldiers, somehow corrupted or whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah, of just a different nation could also be.
Yeah, could also be. They have a captain that has made a plan beforehand with their group to do whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Then the situation right in the battle changes because of a plethora of different things. They could happen at the same time, whatever. And then they need to adjust that plan or have employ the backup plan or whatever. But you need to get that information across to your people. So you shout orders. The captain gives the other bandits, for example, or other soldiers, orders what to do. And the party can understand that. And then it basically becomes, or it can get to a really interesting game of chess, basically, to see who gets to outsmart the others with the information that they got from the others. Because the party can also communicate with each other, but mostly only in the same way the soldiers can, through shouting orders, shouting ideas, and whatever. And the same thing, the soldiers hear that as well and can adapt to that accordingly.
Yeah, I think that it's very important to look at this because this is really, again, one of the abilities that makes you advantageous to be the hunter, right? It comes down, again, to this very basic concept of what do you have at your advantage to get the advantage you want. Being able to organize yourselves in groups and communicate with each other is a huge advantage for these groups. Kobolds, goblins, right? For example, there's a lot of good videos about these very small CR, very minor creatures, races and people, on how they can still pose a very big threat to even higher level adventurers by using these specific tactics. I mean, The Monsters Know What They Are Doing by Keith Amman is a great book for everyone to get exactly that. Kobolds are not just weird draconic creatures that can hold a spear, but they are trappers. They build traps because they know they are not big enough to fight the big folk or even a lion or a bear head on. But what they can do is make a pit trap that when something stronger or bigger and heavier than them walks over it, crashes in, and gets trapped down there. They are light. They are small. They can walk over that no problem, but someone else can't. Boom. That's a tactic that they can employ. Again, they know about themselves and can use that to an advantage against anyone that isn't them. And they can work together in a group.
Exactly. They can formulate more complex plans than just going off of their instinct and what they need to do and know what they can do. They can communicate different positions, different roles in, for example, a hunting group. One is the tracker. One tracks the prey. The others keep watch. One is an expert bowman or whatever, right? They can communicate the roles and therefore have a perfect fit for each thing they want to do. This is a thing that, or a good thing that comes with the ability to communicate more complex thoughts than just going off of vibes, for example. Like any humanoid-ish race, species or whatever can do. They can talk. And just the ability to talk is a huge advantage to employ these tactics in the first place.
Communication is such a huge advantage. And one of the reasons we as humans, once again, became the species we are today, the dominant and all-destroying species that everyone hates on Earth. Today. Okay, maybe a little bit much, but you get the idea once again. But exactly, using that makes humanoid creatures, basically all creatures that have the ability to communicate are kind of humanoid creatures. That single group of creatures, of enemies, of opponents, becomes more scary by that fact. One thing we can combine with that is knowledge itself, right? This group can communicate a battle plan, but it's not that this group has to communicate this battle plan in the battle itself. They communicate up front. They organize themselves up front. They make their plans and then carry them out. And one of the things there is their plan that they are making will be influenced by the knowledge that they have. And if they know that their plan will be influenced by the knowledge they have, they will gather knowledge first.
Yep.
Once again, what my lizard folk did. They first decided to test the party to see what they can do, to see what happens. Again, if the best case comes to be, the party is dead and the lizard folk have done their job. If not, they at least know how capable the party is of something. And that fact changes their battle plans. Knowing what your opponent wants to do changes your battle plan. And now it becomes fun because you can think about this in two different ways. Either this battle plan is made specifically cookie cutter clear for one opponent. So for example, your party has already gained renown and is well known, and the villain has eyes on them with spies and knows where the party is traveling and decides to hire a group of mercenaries to specifically attack your party. Then those mercenaries will be specifically equipped to fight your party, at least to the best of their and the villain's knowledge, because that will guarantee the best chance of success. And if, for example, your party isn't the primary target or is only part of a group of primary targets, those specific defenses or abilities against the party will be less and less and less. For example, if your party runs into a group of kobolds that have put up a few traps along the path to just trap anyone to get their money or to get food and stuff like that, or even just trap animals, the trap is not going to be cut for the party. It's not going to have specific defenses against the party. But it might still be effective. But if those kobolds would be to attack the party specifically, and the kobolds know one of the party people can fly, that's why when we have our pitfall trap, we also throw I don't know, a net over that pitfall trap so no one can escape from once they are down there. That is a specific tactic employed to attack something specific about the party you're attacking.
Exactly.
But if those kobolds don't know that, they wouldn't do that because nothing would happen. They wouldn't need the net to throw over this pitfall trap.
Yeah. And I think especially with the ability to communicate more complex things, a completely new form of combat kind of emerges or can emerge.
Yeah.
The topic of social combats, kind of. You can have those in any game you want, just having a chord hearing or something along those lines. You can use tactics there as well to, for example, just knowing what to ask the person in front of you to make them look bad in front of the jury, and specifically ask a person to attack their credibility, is a perfect tactic to use in these certain situations. Because the people that are using those tactics have gathered knowledge and are able to formulate specific plans to perfectly fit this situation that they want them to fit.
I mean, social combats are all about tactics, knowledge, and communication, right?
Exactly.
They have nothing to do with brutal strength, at least not for me, right? They are all about knowing what to say in the right moment, saying it in the right moment, saying it in the right way, and all of that. That has nothing to do with how good you're able to swing a sword, which might be able to save you even against the most tactical, advanced people that you're fighting on the battlefield. That falls away, your ability to swing a sword, if you get put into a social situation. Obviously, right? No one needs to state that, actually. But social combats are only about tactics, and you cannot omit them. Because if you do not have tactics in your social combat, it would just be screaming at each other, which would be the equivalent of a brutal raw strength fight or brutal raw force fight. And I don't know, maybe that's fun for like 1 or 2 sessions, but after that, I think it's very repetitive. Just like the brutal raw power combats are very repetitive, because the players will just use their strongest ability and then be done with it.
And I think a fun way to there's a fun way to combine these two situations, especially if the party is fighting someone that have watched over them for a long time, even or it might be a good guy turned evil or whatever, right? They can say specific things to get into the heads of your party, to throw them off balance, to throw them off their game, to get an advantage. That's also using a verbal tactic or a tactic from a social encounter, but put it in a physical contest to gain the upper hand. All of what we said the party can use as well, obviously. No one is stopping them to use tactics, because they are. Usually they are. They think about when to engage an enemy, what enemy to engage, and why. Just maybe they don't even actively think about it, but they passively know when to do stuff or don't, just because of experience.
I mean, a few things you can always ask yourself for your tactics is also, for example, does this group of enemies, if it is a group of enemies, have a leader? Right? We talked about that alpha wolves aren't necessarily a thing, but still, because that is so ingrained in human perception of wolves, if my players ask me when they fight a pack of wolves in my D&D games or wherever in my whatever fantasy TTRPG games, I most of the time say yes. Because that means my players are gonna my players have an idea that isn't just let's kill all these wolves. And alone for that reason, it's always worth it to just say, yes, this has an alpha wolf, because most of the time your players want to then only kill that one or dissuade that one from attacking, and then the pack dissipates, and then the pack runs away. And that's way more cooler than, oh, let's just kill all of these wolves. Sometimes I will still say, nope, you know that alpha wolves aren't actually a thing. These do not have an alpha wolf, but if you kill the elders, the older looking wolves, the smaller ones or the younger ones might run away. Stuff like that. But still, it's a question you can ask yourself, because you can then make up information about them. What does that imply if they have a leader or if they don't have a leader? If they have a leader, what does that mean? Well, it means that, for example, this is the person that made the plan. This is the person that these other ones probably will look to. So yeah, if that one dies, gets captured or whatever, you will drive fear into the others. You will dissuade the others from fighting. You will change the combat with just a leader being present.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a cool topic there, which would be the running away part, because I think this tactic, in quotation marks, or this tactic is completely underused in most games, because nearly nothing, just for the sake of it, fights to the death.
Nothing that has a conscience that is in any way focused on survival will fight to the death. It will surrender, it will run away, it will try to do everything in its power to survive. The only things that do not survive are the things that know that they cannot die, even if they get killed. Those two things are not the same. Look at, for example, demons, that if they are killed on anything but their home plane, just turn to ash and return on their home plane. They can fight to the death, because death on this plane of existence does mean nothing to them. they can fight to the death. But a dragon or even a simple wolf will most of the time, basically at any time, not fight till death, because this would just mean that they die. No one wants to die.
And this comes back to the knowledge of what you're able to do and what you're not. Because if a demon knows, even if I die, I just return in my home plane, they are more willing to take certain risks and are just willing to execute those risks in whatever cost, because they don't have really a big cost to them. Just maybe, some paperwork back at home.
Yeah.
But that's not really a big deal.
No, it isn't.
But if you cease to exist, that might be.
But again, one other thing that you, for example, can look at is this group smart enough to have a plan B? What if their plan fails? What happens then?
Oh, yeah.
Does the leader give new orders? Does the group run away? Does the group become a pack of scattered, frightful kobolds that do not know what to do now? Ask yourself, if you really want a tactical combat, is this group smart enough or careful enough to have a plan B? And sometimes plan B is run away. That is a totally valid plan B. But is the group smart enough to have talked about it? Or is the group smart enough to communicate a plan B? Because sometimes group just make one plan and hope it works. But oftentimes things are smart enough to have some kind of plan B, or they're smart enough in the situation to adapt. And thinking just about what happens if the thing that this creature or this person wants to do goes wrong, what do they do then? Already gives you a good idea of their fighting style even. It gives you a better way to react as well, right? Because your players will gonna do something. They have their own ideas. And you should be able to react to your players' ideas. And thinking about a plan B already gives you a lot of ideas for what this creature might do if something happens that it did not expect. And that's great, because it will reward your players' ideas way more, because they don't only think, they've changed the outcome of the combat already. They've changed the combat itself.
It's basically what you have to do as a GM all the time. Just think about what your enemies would do in that situation. You have the time to prepare for that, but as a GM, you have to adapt to everything your players do. So does the enemy. But you can kind of think about rough ideas, what the enemy would do in certain situations. And then how this is executed is a completely different thing that has to be adapted on the fly. But the overall direction of, is this enemy going to run away, or is it fighting till the death?
Yeah.
And I don't really have anything else to talk about.
I've talked about all I wanted to say.
Thank you for listening. Hear you on the next one, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of DoubleDM. It appears you liked this one. What we had to say and our advice helped you. Why not show us how we helped you in a rating, or even write a review detailing us how we helped? You can do this on the platform that you are listening on right now. It's just a few clicks, doesn't take long, and helps us out. It gets us out there and our advice into more ears of more people. Thanks again for listening and joining us on this amazing journey. Have a great day, and hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Ayo! Give me a sick beat. Having too much fun with the equipment. So do you want to bring us in, or should I?
Go ahead. I'll catch myself.
Will you catch yourself, though?
Yes.
Okay. Then 3, 2...